Hello everyone, my name is Michael Ruggiero, and I want to start out by saying the topic that I chose to do is something that really resonates with me, and that is post-traumatic stress disorder in service members as well as a civilian element. So, what my goal is for this is I want to show that PTSD manifests in significant physical and psychological symptoms that across the population, there's this stigma that comes with it, which creates barriers for treatment and how we seek help and how we address it. And my goal is to kind of destigmatize that side of mental health and show that advocacy for yourself is not a sign of weakness, because typically with a lot of military service members, they believe in a stigma where if you can't really see what's going on, we're not going to report on it. Because our time in the Marine Corps, it was very much, if you went to medical, if you tried to seek help, you were labeled as a malingerer, which is basically someone that wanted to get out of doing a field op, wanted to get out of doing a hike, wanted to get out of doing PT, it was kind of like, oh, you're just kind of taking the easy way out. I was a squad leader, so I didn't have that luxury. Whenever I was sick, whenever I had something going on, whenever something was wrong, it was always, I have to be there. Did not matter the circumstance. I have lost people in my life. I have lost family members where I couldn't go back to funerals. There have been times on deployment where my grandmother passed away and we didn't have self-service, so I just got a message, and for a month I was in total darkness where we were in Syria, so couldn't speak to anyone, had to internalize that. And also on deployment, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're working 12 on, 12 off for 8 months straight. You have no day off. It encompasses your entire life, so your brain doesn't really have time to process what is going on the day-to-day. It's just you're thinking hour to hour of what your job is. So with that traumatic stress alone, coming back from Iraq and Syria, it puts you in this weird limbo state where there are things that you want to share and you want to talk about the best way, but you can't. So the best way I can describe it is, there's this door, and on the other side of it, it's everything you experienced, all the traumatic stress, all the trauma, all the negative things that have impacted you, that have changed the course and trajectory of how you interact with the world. And it's this door. And when you get back stateside, it's almost like someone takes a key and they lock the door, and they don't throw away the key. They disintegrate it. They melt it. They totally, you cannot open this door again. And it's odd because you remember a door is there, but there's concrete built up over the door. The key is gone, and you have no one to share it with that can understand except the people you were on that deployment with. So reaching out to medical when we get back, because we all have to take a psych evaluation when we get back from deployment to make sure we're mentally capable. We're usually told, hey, like, if you want to still stay in, if you want to still be in positions, just tell them what they want to hear, just do this, just do that. So you have a lot of people that come back and they compartmentalize a lot of the trauma they're in because they don't want to lose their position. I took great pride in being a squad leader that took care of their people, that I did everything for my guys. I loved being it, so I never wanted to have that taken away from me. And it was always something that I could deal with because I looked at my seniors and I looked at the people above them, and they all dealt with a lot worse. So in my head, hey, if they could do it, I'm going to do it. It wasn't until I got out of the military that I realized there's something wrong. When I got back from Syria, I realized that I had been developing a problem with substance abuse, with alcohol, with smoking cigarettes. And then when I got out, it was very much, I felt like I had to play catch up with my life, because I got out at 22 and I enlisted at 18. So I was fresh out of high school. It was probably like 2 weeks. And then I went in. So I was essentially going into life as a 22-year-old adult, like as if I was a high schooler, if that makes sense. So there was so much I wanted to do that I couldn't do when I was in the military. So I traveled the world. I went all over the place. I backpacked in Europe for 4 months. I tried to get everything I needed to do up here. And I thought the more I expose myself to other things, if I go and travel the world, if I'm drinking, if I'm smoking, if I'm doing any of that, I can put it all on the back burner, because it wasn't at my immediate, it wasn't in the forefront. So it wasn't until 2 years after that I realized, like, hey, I had developed a problem. Every time that I had one of these instances of PTSD, I would drink, or I would smoke, or I would do something for an outlet that wasn't congruent with the life I wanted. And it was typically a negative impact. It wasn't until one of my buddies had taken his own life that we deployed with, where it really made me take a step back and realize, like, hey, I have to get my SHIT together. So I started looking at VA healthcare, because a lot of my buddies had not. We're kind of told that the VA system is broken and getting a rating takes years, and why bother doing it? But I am so internally grateful that I listened to my gut, and I listened to my friends that had went through with filing a claim, because I did end up getting the help I needed. I ended up getting a therapist that I still see once a week. I ended up getting a psychiatrist that I see once a month. I ended up getting wellness checks, as far as me going to the VA, getting dental care, being a part of a group, joining clubs that I can talk to other veterans who have experienced this stuff with. But it's also important, just as the veterans that suffer with PTSD, that we go over civilians that suffer with PTSD too. Because a lot of the time, people link the two of combat related to PTSD. But PTSD expands to childhood trauma. And I didn't realize that I had PTSD from my childhood trauma until I was talking to my psychiatrist about it, until I was talking to my therapist about it and opening up. And I realized the ripple effects of stuff that happens to you at a young kid can change your entire perspective, your entire outlook on how you view the world and how you come in contact with people and build relationships. Because at the end of the day, I think we all want to build healthy and happy relationships with the people we love and care about. That could be extremely hard when you don't even know yourself, the person you are. There was a lot of times that I would mask who I was as a person until I got a sense of who you were as a person, because I didn't know your reaction. I didn't know how you acted in public. I didn't know what you were cool with joking about. I didn't know the settings you would want to be in. That falls into another category of this isolation factor that PTSD hosts, where if someone wanted me to go somewhere, it wasn't exactly an easy task. There was a time in my life from 2022 to 2023 where I was total isolationist. I had my fiance that was with me, and they would go out and they would party and hang out with their friends. I was always like, you do not stop your life for me. You do not put anything on hold for me. I gotta fix what's up here, and you have to enjoy your life. I am never the type of person to say you can't do something because I physically and emotionally can't. I've realized that about myself, and that's okay. Saying no is so okay. It's a one-word answer. You don't have to explain yourself. If you're not comfortable in a situation, I remove myself from the situation, and I found that to be the most healthiest thing for me. Of course, you do it in a polite way. I don't do the Irish goodbye. Like, I will say, like, hey, I'm getting a little overstimulated. I need to leave this. This place is too loud. This place is too crowded. This place is too this, that, and the other. And concerts, big no. 4th of July fireworks, big no. Loud, dark parties with flashing lights, big no. I like to know my exits. When I sit down at a restaurant, I have my back to the wall. I'm looking at everything. I'm dissecting everything. If I'm driving on the road and I see a garbage can, for instance, I'm thinking, okay, that could be an IED. Because in my head, we're trained to look at things and assume, okay, what could be made out of that to hurt me? that is very much a mindset that travels with me from deployment way back in 2016, 2018, all the way to 2024, 2025. It's something that comes in my head all the time. I could see something mysterious on the ground. I could see something in the airport, and I could be like, that could be a threat. Stuff that people would normally not take as a threat. But to me, it is. Some other things I wanted to go over was there's a constant fight or flight mode where you're never out of it. You're kind of always bracing for it, or you're anticipating it to happen when you least expect it. 1 in 3 veterans with PTSD struggle with substance abuse. That is what I was talking about earlier, which is very common, and 20 veterans a day take their own lives by suicide. And it's a heartbreaking statistic that is more common in people than you know, but not just civilians, also on a service member standpoint. I have lost more friends than I would care to count for since I got out of the military in 2019. It is a sad reality of the life that we deal with when we get out. You can be as close as you want with someone, and they could be hiding the worst battles they have ever faced in their life, and you just wouldn't know. For some, like myself, I turned to self-medicating with drugs, with alcohol, because that was the only escape that I knew. I internalized everything. I did not like talking to anyone. It was not even something in my mind that was a possibility, because they weren't there. So how could they know what I'm dealing with? And it was very much, I was angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the world. I was angry at people. And it was so much resentment that I had for people that were living a life of fun and joy. And it was something that I wanted. And I realized I couldn't have until I sought out help, which is the most important thing. If you think you are alone, I can 100% assure you, from someone who thought this for so many years, you're not. There's someone that cares. There's someone that's going to listen, pick up the phone, call someone, text someone. I don't care if you send memes to someone. That's how I communicated with a bunch of my friends when I got out. I couldn't emotionally tell them anything, but I'd send them memes. I send them reels on Instagram. I send them TikToks. Like, it's just a little, hey, I'm checking in on you. Because sometimes it's not easy to say, hey, I'm really worried about you. What's going on? Sometimes it's easier to just be there in a comedic way, in a way of caring, in many facets of life. Another statistic I would like to share is 70% of US adults at least experience one traumatic event in their lifetime. So I don't want people to brush off things they went through in their life in accordance to judging themselves on someone else's experience. I see a lot of, well, I went through this and this, so I can't really have it because I look at you and you went through this and this and you have it. That's not the case at all. Dealing with mental health and dealing with PTSD transcends the traumatic event in a way that it covers the person that it's affecting in their own way. There is no comparison with post-traumatic stress, with events that happen in your life that they outweigh someone else's. Like, it's not, hey, a veteran's here and your PTSD is here. Like, it's a fluctuating scale, and no one can tell you that your stress and what you went through is not comparable with someone else's. It's not the case. I see it all the time. And that's also something that makes a lot of civilians less prone to acting on, because they just assume, hey, like, it's not as bad, so I'm not going to seek help, and then one day it's too late. And that is something I really want to get through, is that it is not too late. You can always seek help. And another statistic I wanted to show is that first responders, such as police officers, firefighters, paramedics, who repeatedly exposed to traumatic events and PTSD, have a 19% higher rate of mental illness, according to the National Alliance Association. The physical effects of PTSD in civilians mirror those in veterans. Chronic stress from trauma that leads to digestive disorders, chronic fatigue syndrome, a weaker immune system. A 2019 study by Gemma Psychiatry found that trauma survivors are 37% more likely to develop cardiovascular disease than those without PTSD. This leads to heart attacks, this leads to high blood pressure, this leads to an exorbitant amount of secondary illnesses that come from your mental state. Excuse me. One thing that must be done is expanding access to treatments. There need to be more cognitive behavioral therapy. There needs to be a normalization about PTSD and how to make that connection with someone that you can, it's almost like a give and take. Like, you can tell them what's going on, you can take it in, you can digest it, and then you can slowly process that out into your entire life to make sure that you're strengthening yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit, because they're all connected, they're all affected. PTSD is not just physical pain, psychological pain, it's also physical pain. Like, all of this stuff transfers into one another. Your fatigue, how you coexist with others in the world, like just your body. There are days where I'll have nightmares and I'll wake up in a hot sweat, or I'll be exhausted, or I'll be sore, or I can't sleep. And it was the help through medicine from my psychiatrist, and it was the help through my own therapy of just exposing myself to different elements of, hey, maybe I can go to this bar, maybe I can be in a setting that isn't so strict on how I put myself, because I put myself in very safe settings a lot of the time, and I don't expose myself to opportunities that could be present if I would just get out there a little more and practice. And that is the key. Practicing, becoming a better version of yourself, and just figuring out what works for you can change your entire life. In conclusion, PTSD, just as any other mental health issue, is a societal issue. From civilians to veterans to families to entire communities that have gone through trauma. The physical, psychological, and economic toll is staggering, but recovery is possible. So if you think that you have PTSD and you think it's not severe enough for you to seek help, I promise you, it is. You can seek help. You can talk to someone. Your feelings are valid. Your emotions are valid. Everything you are experiencing is real. And if it is real to you, then you must go seek help for it. PTSD is not a sign of weakness. It's a natural response to trauma. And I think that is the key takeaway I want everyone to take away from this video, is that it's normal to experience this stuff. Whether you're a veteran or civilian, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Together we can create a world where it feels safe to say that, hey, I need help. Thank you so much, and